Hello again, Stefan.
Hi, Benicia.
Now let's get to the nitty-gritty, your project Dancewise. And can you tell me a bit about, well, tell me all about where you are up to with it at the present moment and all the visionary things that you're going to be doing with the many people you've got involved.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. Dancewise is the name of my book, but it's also the name of this project, and one seems to follow naturally from the other. So in the book Dancewise, there is quite a lot written about dance in mental health support, and I look at the word mental health in a very broad way, as in our emotional health, mental health. For those who are into the word spiritual, our spiritual well-being, how we connect with our community, and the role that dance can have to help us in all of those. There's another chapter to do with trauma release, trauma support, trauma transformation, which is very, very much connected with that. And that is a particular focus of the new project, trauma release through movement, through dance, and related to that, all integrated arts of all kinds, because I think they complement each other. And what I want to say at the outset is that in every traditional society that I have heard about, indigenous societies, old village societies, tribal societies, there were all sorts of things built in that help people through really difficult times, even overwhelming times, plagues and war and things that are potentially traumatizing. They're less traumatizing because they're held by the whole community, and the community meet regularly in community they don't do what we would call now like processing, they don't do like psychological techniques. They did what they always did. They danced, they sang, they spoke together, they shared meals, and they created a fabric of collective strength that was greater than any individual person's situation, that sort of was like a holding structure. So part of what really interests me about dance and music and all the other things that complement it is that they can help us as a modern society to reweave the strands of the fabric back into a self-supporting community.
I think that's, as you said, I like the word that you're using, weave, because we've become so fragmented, not only within ourselves, but in our societies, and families don't live very close to each other, many nowadays. Elderly people are put in care homes. Other, the whole Western culture is very fragmented, and also we've got so used to being in our intellect, whereas, as you're saying, dance and music and movement together, it's much more right-brained. You're not having to think and process in talk therapy, which can be inhibiting for people, and it can keep you still stuck in the head sometimes. So that balance, as you're saying, with movement, dance, and can complement talking therapies and everything else. It's all part of the fabric of helping people move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the way you said that, because there are different dimensions going on when we dance. There's the individual dimension, which is that I'm more aware of my body, my emotions, my senses, and the tendency that we have, which is cultivated in our society, to be very focused in your head, is balanced. We can reintegrate. There's definitely a role for the logic. I wouldn't want people to be without it. But when you're only logical and you can't feel your feelings, you hardly feel your body, we end up getting ill and feeling very isolated somehow. We are even isolated from ourselves, our different sides of ourselves. And then the other aspect complementing that is the way that we connect with other people. And we can connect through dance and through many of the other more traditional ways, storytelling, singing together. We connect heart to heart. It's much less to do about whether we all think the same and agree on an idea. it's somehow it's much more inclusive than that. Heart energy is very inclusive. You just feel family. You start to feel family with people that you dance with, especially if you dance in a way where you can see them, like in a circle.
And they haven't even got to share their stories or their pain. It's just being held in that field of support and nourishment and care.
Yeah, and also when we share stories, if we think of people who've experienced extreme trauma, it may be very hard to share for two reasons. Firstly, because the memory, when you have an overwhelming experience, protects you by stashing those memories in a safe place. They're not actually accessible because they're so toxic. So it does the very wisest, best thing it can do at the time, which is to bury them. We feel them in our nerves and sinews afterwards, but we can't necessarily recall the events or talk about them. The other thing is that to try to recall them may reactivate the anxiety or the feeling of overwhelm. There might be a time and a place, a very supported time and place to do it, but we wouldn't necessarily want to do that all the time when we get together with our friends. But as we dance, we inhabit different parts of our feelings, different parts of our movement. We start to release everything that is stuck. It brings back fluidity and flow into a system that's become rigid and defensive. So it's a slightly more oblique and safe way of, you might say, speaking directly to the nervous system to help it to calm down, to help it to find harmony, and to find the off switch, so we're not totally on vigilant and alert all the time as we may be after a shock or a series of shocks, and to come back to the point where we can heal ourselves.
I know with military veterans who've got PTSD, their nervous system is such on high alert, and if people ask them, they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to bring it all back, but it's created this big block which they're fighting inside to communicate with their family and things, but then they can't go there, whereas dance and movement can bypass that, as you're saying, and start to dissolve those barriers.
It's true, and also complementary to that, artwork, singing together, anything where you're expressing the feelings, not necessarily having to revisit the specifics of memories which may anyway not be accessible, but to allow the feelings to start to process themselves, to move rather than to be lodged inside.
So it's a very healing practice.
Yeah.
I know you in Ipswich you have been involved with a project called Inside Out, or is it Inside Out is the project and you've been involved with it. Could you explain a little bit how that's helped the people who take part of that?
Yeah, I'd really like to. I'm still very much part of the Inside Out project. One of the lovely things is that every teacher or facilitator that brings their skills to it.
What is it exactly? Can you just explain
right,
what it is?
Okay, let me backtrack. Yeah, good point. Yeah, what is it? I must say, when I first heard the name Inside Out Community, even before I knew what it was, I thought, oh, I think that could be me. I had an invitation maybe 15 years ago to teach circle dance as part of a mental health support project. And it was a small group of people who'd set it up with the idea that rather than get together and talk about our what's challenging us and try and sort of process it through words, but they would offer a range of creative activities with the hope that it would have some therapeutic benefit. One of the founders is a psychologist who'd been practicing and had witnessed that in his work. And he wanted to open that idea out. So they called in people like me to offer circle dance and creative movement, other people to offer art, music, storytelling. They founded a pop group, all sorts of things. They just opened doorways of possibility. And the experience has been very, very heartening over the years. Firstly, what I've witnessed personally, I've seen people who on the first session, in their body language, were very sort of defended, sometimes in the middle of summer wearing a very heavy coat, which suggests to me feeling very vulnerable, potentially exposed. The same, I'm just thinking of one particular person at the moment who has been a very regular person. A couple of weeks in, she took off her heavy coat and she said, I hope you don't mind, but I'm just going to watch the dancing. I'm more comfortable watching. And of course, it's fine. But she did at a certain point say, I think I'd like to join in, but I don't want to hold hands or anything. I'll just go behind. Fine. A few weeks later, she was joining hands and has been ever since. And that's just a sign to me of small incremental changes that I've seen in her, and I see her now as a person that smiles much more easily. She looks in your eyes rather than avoiding them, as I think she did at first, and there's just a different sense about her. She looks more comfortable in her body. I'm not attributing all of that to dance. I think it's been the mixture of inside out activities that's supported her. Some people have come into the project and are now facilitating. They're now either volunteering or leading sessions because they've built up their confidence and want to share what they've benefited from. But it's been a great learning and encouragement for me to see how these ordinary simple things, if you like, but offered with an atmosphere of great respect for each person's individuality. Do as much or little as you feel like doing. Just be where you're at.
That sounds like a key thing, as you said, with that lady, that she could have gone to a place where they said, oh, it's hot in here, why don't you take your coat off, or something like that.
Or come on love, come and join in.
Come and join in, or take your coat off, or anything but putting onto her. Whereas it sounds that, the fact that she was allowed to just sit there with her coat on, and it was completely given her permission to go at her own pace.
Yeah, and people sometimes who are generally very active and engaged might come in and look different, and some people have different moods on different days, and I totally respect it, and I've come to realise that it's okay, that it doesn't. My role as dance teacher is not the paramount reason I'm there. I'm there as a safe space provider for people to get whatever they need, whatever it may be, which may be dancing.
Is that just one community centre in Suffolk here, or is it part of a network?
It's not a place, although we often use Eastern Angles as our base for workshops, and we've done Zoom ones when we couldn't do live ones. It is one project, but it's received recently awards, attention, and congratulations, including from the Queen, believe it or not. So it is seen now, because in some respects mental health seems to be failing in terms of demonstrable results. This is a project that is achieving demonstrable results. It's attracting a lot of interest from other people. And there's talk now about whether other people would like to start a similar sort of sister project.
So like there's a template, and then other towns can then
adapt it to your own needs and your own
right.
communities. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, that's great. Because I think that also weaves in again to your project Dancewise. You want to have almost like a directory or a network of people who are in different disciplines, but can still kind of interweave. So somebody, I presume, may be looking for something else, and they could say, oh, they've got the same roots, if you like, but can you explain a little bit?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because dance means a lot to me, and from my I'm very interested in what other people are doing in the field of trauma support, And I think there are some fantastic people out there. Just Google it, you'll see a lot of excellent people, very good at presenting what they do, somatic therapy, all sorts of things. But it seems to me that dance is very little represented, and even when it is, the scope of it isn't fully, what's the word, documented. I see things that we could be doing and we can be doing, and actually they're not that difficult to do. So I would like to fill in some of the gaps in dance and related things. Music is very closely related to dance. At the same time, I'd also like to host a kind of map of resources and people and books that may be of interest to either therapists working with trauma or individuals working through their own trauma, to see what works, because everybody's story is different, and now we've all got different receptors and things we relate to. So yeah, it's a project with dance in the middle, but a whole lot of complementary things equally respected, and
like
hopefully with arrows
Yeah.
pointing to different places you can go to according to the resources you want. And can I just say, I'm sort of on a bit of a roll here, that this came up in our first interview, from the way that I look at things. So many of us are experiencing what I look at as trauma echoes, or some people call trauma imprints, and coping, or maybe thriving, but still experiencing periodic effects of trauma, and still really able to benefit from all the things that can help us to heal and whole. So these resources are as much for people who are doing all right, but still recognise, as I do, some of the patterns that I struggle with that come back, have a trauma connection, a trauma root, and to understand it better and work through them is of an ongoing benefit, as well as, if we go to the other extreme, you might say, not only people who have experienced overwhelming trauma, but who are still in the middle of it, people who are in a situation they can't get out of. I would like there to be whatever supports we can offer. I wish I had a magic wand, but whatever we can offer to help people to get through it, so they can at some point be at the point of saying, well, okay, I survived it, and now what?
I think also, in the UK anyway, a lot of the resources which were there 5 years ago even, are not there anymore. I'm just thinking things like parent support groups or mental health support groups, combat stress. I think that's not really there anymore in the way it was. So all those people who relied on a venue or a community, that network has been,
the
rug has been taken away from a lot of under people's feet.
Very unfortunately, because I think it's such a short-termist view to think that you can save money, or if you're short of money that we take it out from these services, because this is the social fabric. And how much does it cost to deal with people who are suicidal or depressed and unable to work? It's much better to help people before it gets to that point.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, that's very much my interest, is to promote that understanding of the value of offering community-based support and preventative, actually enjoyable medicine. Why not enjoy your medicine if dance and singing and artwork and doing things together cooperatively, not only pleasures, but each person who participates is part of the strength of every other person. We become each other's strength.
As you said, it's like weaving that fabric, and
or
like a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, but you need to get all the links.
Yes, exactly.
Strong community.
Yeah, and if you've got 2 or 3 chains around the same wheel, when one of them's not able to function, the others take it up.
With the project, how many people have you got scattered in different countries?
Ooh, I'm amazed. I'm amazed. I'm glad you asked that. Look, I woke up one day in January and I just knew I had to do this. And I'd been saying to Bethan, you know, I might have a bit more spare time now that I've done this book and I've done this and that. And she laughed at me because she said, you'll be up to something soon. And I woke up, as I sometimes do.
Got a new project.
4 in the morning, and it's like, really? Oh. And you know, at that time of the morning, you haven't really got much brain power or resistance. It's like, oh, I'll write it down, okay. And I don't know why it just became clear to me that this trauma theme that had been coming up was more than just a personal interest. It was something that
It's like a necessity.
I could play a role that was potentially useful. If it's potentially useful, why not do it and see where it goes? And you know, I'm 70 and I'm thinking it's the time of life where I don't want to be working forever. I can't be working forever, but what I can do is try and leave some useful resources and things that other people can build on, pick up on and improve on. So this project, in a way, partly it started as a legacy project. As soon as I put the word out, loads of people said, oh yeah, interview me, do you need funding? Right, what, okay. So we had funding to create a website, donated very freely, with no effort, and a lot of people like yourself who said, maybe I'll help you with doing interviews, others who said, well, I'd like to be interviewed, I've got a background in, did you know I had a background in art therapy or dance therapy? Or so I'm going to try and be very impartial about what will be valued, because I don't know, and different people will find different values in different things. And I guess the challenge will be to give it some kind of cohesive form, so that someone coming into the website will be able to find what they need, rather than it being like a jumble sale full of all this good stuff, but you have to sift through it all. So that's in a way that's where my mind is now on the project, is trying to make the best possible order out of this very multifactorial resources pool of people who've just come forward immediately without really, I'm just pretty much whispering the word rather than shouting it, you know. But I've been so heartened, because you wake up with an idea and think, well, am I bonkers? Well, maybe I am anyway. But and then other people connect with it. So it's been coming up for me too. I think, okay, there's something in this. We'll do this thing. And the wackiest thing, I woke up another morning.
All right.
And I thought, we've got to do a board game.
Board game?
A board game.
Oh, you haven't mentioned that.
There's going to be a board game, which just helps people, including children. I want it to be really easy to understand. Helps people to understand what happens when potentially traumatizing events happen. Because so often people feel either alone, or they feel disappointed in themselves for not being able to deal with it, or even shame comes up because it's somehow a natural response to not feeling able to be fully as you feel you want to be in the world. And I think to have it out there, to see it symbolised in some way, represented by animals, by cards, and a sort of like a maze that you have to get through, could be helpful.
But in each animal would be like a different archetype for a particular aspect.
So it's going to be either trauma trek or trauma trove or something like that. And I hope it doesn't sound like I'm going to trivialise it, because I don't. It's going to have as much depth as we can, but also with as much symbolism and playfulness as you can put into that.
Because I think, yes, and then that helps break the energy around it a bit to help people, doesn't it? Especially if you bring, as you said, the playfulness and the joy and the community aspect.
And if it is, in a way, almost a taboo subject, as most things that touch on our mental health still are to some extent, hard to talk about down the pub or with your mates or whoever, it will be a thing. Have you played Trauma Trove? And I don't know, it may work or it may not, but that was another one of these 4 a.m. things.
Great. And I know I did ask before, but you've got people from all over the world who said, count me in. What countries are they scattered
Well,
in?
so far it is mostly English-speaking countries. We've got the 2 coasts of America and the 2 coasts of Canada.
Right.
Spain, interestingly, Italy, UK. I have got a lot of friends in Brazil with relevant skills. Some of them speak more fluent English than others, but I plan, once we get a bit further ahead with it, maybe we can offer translation. I'd love to involve them. 2 of my friends in Chile teach dance with recovering addicts. I'd love to, and they're both trained psychotherapists. Love to draw on their skills as well.
Wonderful. Great. Sounds really exciting. So
I'm excited about it, especially because of the human contact and the fact that I love learning, and I can be learning through other people's skill sets.
And it will develop, and as you said, you haven't got you've got the vision, but it's not fixed in a rigid format.
No.
So depending on who steps forward, and it's going to be interesting to see how it meanders or goes down this alley. Or
Yeah, but that's also it's the interesting challenge, because so often if things are started by a person, that can become a limitation. Either their personality is sort of stamped on it, and it can't then evolve, or people are always referring back to the past. So I want it to be forward-looking and evolutionary, and whatever the starting points are. I mean, our collective knowledge about trauma is galloping forward, and hopefully nothing in the past will limit what we can do in the future.
Great line to end on. So Stefan, thanks for explaining the project, and I look forward to seeing how it develops. Really exciting.
Yeah, well, me too. Thank you very much for your questions. I've really enjoyed it.